Hey everyone, this is Rock from StageInTheSky.com, and this one goes out to my dad. Not just my dad, but also the married folks who've been married for a long, long time, and the old school generation who have no clue about the dating culture and what it's like these days. Because I feel bad for him. Every time he asks me about my dating, I know he wants a grandchild so bad, but the thing my dad needs to understand is that this world is so bad. Like, my generation is not his generation. I have to be selective. I have to be wise and discerning. During his generation, they had Shaft in the 70s. They had the 80s, Bobby Brown. The 90s was a different time. And I grew up partially in the 90s. I'm 35 years old, born 1986. So, I would say around 2010, that's when, things started to take a turn with our culture. I think that's the last time that us millennials who were born a little bit in the 90s, that's when we had to alter our personalities, our behavior, because in 2010, that's when we were inundated with the message. Not just in TV shows, but also celebrities. We had social media washed down on us, where you had celebrities dictating to us how we should be living our lives. And because they're the cool kids, just like in high school, everyone's peer pressured into living life the way they think. And the problem with that is that all of America isn't New York and Los Angeles. You have the middle America, you have the South, and sometimes their culture doesn't fit us. And as I mentioned, it's not just men recognizing issues, but more and more women are speaking up because it affects them too. However, for us men, we have to be careful with providing our perspective, meaning we have to be careful about providing what we want in dating, what we want in a wife, because we run the risk of being called a misogynist, right? And that's all it takes. All it takes is an accusation, regardless of why you want this, whatever. Just hit them with a label. You're a misogynist, you're sexist, and that's it. That's your end of your career. God knows I love women. I credit beautiful women as one of my greatest sources of inspiration. Beautiful women inspired me to hit the gym and lose 178 pounds. For those who don't know, I used to weigh 378 pounds. Now I'm at 225, 230-ish. I box, I'm good looking, I'm in shape. And I credit that mostly to women because I wanted to find a beautiful wife. And, if they're not checking for behemoth monsters the way I used to be, I had to change who I was. Women inspired me not only to lose weight, but also to make something of myself, to be a published author and to excel in life. I wrote one of my books, and it's based on this girl. I was gonna mention her name, but I don't want to mention her name. But in my 20s, there was a paramour who I was deeply in love with, and you can't be with someone like this woman and have nothing going for you. So yeah, women inspire me. I give a lot of credit, and that's why I feel so bad when I hear all these feminists talk about how men are always in control. It's like, you have no idea how powerful women are. Like, what we do as men, a lot of us men, it's influenced by our need to protect and provide, and we're captivated, we're enchanted and inspired by your beauty. All right, to the ladies reading this, one thing you'll notice is that I'm not gonna make any demands of women. You won't hear me say things like, oh, you know what, women need to change and women need to step up and better. You're not gonna hear me say any of that in this video. Mostly because despite the many examples that I'm gonna provide, it's gonna make it sound really bad. It hasn't warped my sense of view or my perspective that there are already good, beautiful, God-fearing women out there who don't shy away from the scriptures. But finding these ladies, connecting with them, how to approach with them, it's not like the old days, Dad. It's not. My generation has ruined that. Okay? Before I begin, let me go ahead and start by just getting out the top 5 disagreements. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretty sure you heard these. I just collected them because as I wrote this essay, I just imagine myself on the other side of the table from someone who's going to disagree with everything I'm about to say. Number 1, whataboutisms. You know this. This is where they deflect and they don't even address the points you mentioned, but they simply turn it around to attack you. Example is, you know what, they do it too, or, what about you, and what do you do? That's whataboutism. You gotta skirt around that. Number 2, anecdotal evidence. This is where, despite the many points you brought up to justify your arguments, they're going to bring out that one person, that one exception that contradicts what you're saying, as if the exception disproves the rule. It doesn't. It just means that that person is different from most. Number 3, the contrarian explanation. This is where they stop and interrupt you to provide an emotionally charged defense that's so convoluted with irrelevant details that it waters down the momentum of your original point. It usually starts with something like, to be fair, followed by points you've already considered but you didn't mention because it goes without saying. Like, I'm not talking about literally everyone here, or, no one's perfect. However, Those things go without saying. When you're having a conversation with a mature, wise adult, you don't need to break down and say, hey, so here's why I see what's going on. I'm not talking about everyone. Number 4 is the hypotheticals. This is the what if question that takes your argument to the extreme ends. Common example is in the abortion debates. So when people who are pro-choice, they'll say, what about if rape happens, when they're talking about how, oh, this is why we need abortion and the right to freedom of choice, when really rape makes up less than 2% of the cases. So they'll take it to that hypothetical. It's not an argument, it's just hypothetical. Number 5 is, and this is the most common issue, small-minded ignorance. This is the ignorance in which a person simply finds it hard to believe what you're saying because they personally never experienced it, or it's the first time they're hearing it. These are also the ones who are born and raised in the same community, or they're caught in the echo chamber. They don't even realize it. Where all their friends and all their family, they all think alike and they all have the same worldviews. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that you should hang out with whoever makes you feel comfortable. However, when it comes to everything I'm about to say, you're gonna hear some things that you probably never considered or never heard of because, look at your circle. It's like everyone's already you. So, all right. So, and also this is the reason why free speech is so important. If you silence an opinion, this goes back to 2016. If you silence an opinion, you're only sweeping that opinion under the rug. It's still there, but it creates the illusion that the opinion doesn't exist. Which is why the media was so shocked when Trump won in 2016, when everyone projected Hillary would win by a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
He will never be president of the United States.
Donald Trump will never be elected president of the United States.
Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States.
If you go into your office, hey, who voted for Trump? No one's going to raise their hand because as soon as they do, you're going to hit them with sexism, racism, homophobia, which just silences them, but it doesn't make their opinion go away. Now let's get to the nitty gritty. This first video is literally one of hundreds out there. And no, I don't seek out videos telling me what I want to hear, but I confess I'm encouraged when I see videos like this because without them, I believe an entire generation would be the victim of gaslighting. Gaslighting is when you manipulate a person into thinking that what they're seeing isn't actually happening, and there's something wrong with you for thinking it. Trust me, Dad, the suicide rate among young men, it's not good. And personally, if I didn't have God or if I didn't discover Sigmas or the Red Pill community, I don't think I'd ever commit suicide because I'm way too defiant. However, there was a time between the age of 25 and 30 where I honestly thought I was alone in seeing what was happening in this world. Alright, so this first video, I'm just going to play little clips because I didn't get their permission, but just it sums up what's really going on in dating culture.
I'd rather a 10. Yeah. And you don't understand. Well, I'm a 10. I go to school, I go to work, and I have a great personality, and
Guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Nowadays, it seems that all women, regardless of their own attractiveness, is walking around thinking they're a perfect 10 out of 10. Now moving on to point number 2 for why women overestimate their worth. Women equating their hookup options to their actual value. Now, because of the nature of the current dating market, just about every average woman, and in fact even some below average women, have access to regular intimacy and hookups from the guys at the top. Back to the dating market, all the average women end up wasting time chasing and trying to pin down the chads, and they string along and friend zone all of the guys they're actually on the same level with. Moving on to point number 3, acceptance of unattractiveness. And this does not apply to men. It's almost exclusively for women. And this is mostly the result of feminism. Now, this idea in the last 10 years has pretty much stepped in and said all women, irrespective of their own attractiveness, are all deserving of a perfect 10. Moving on to point number 4. The media promoting delusion. Now, about 5 years ago, there was this film that came out called 50 Shades of Grey. And in fact, the book that it was based on was one of the highest grossing of the decade. And if you've not heard of this film or the book before, it's basically about this billionaire Chad who goes for and ends up in a relationship with some fairly average woman. A similar storyline happens in other movies and TV shows, such as the highly acclaimed Sex and the City. This series, too, showed women, despite being in their 30s and 40s, still being able to pin down and get commitment from chads. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the media is portraying the idea that any woman, irrespective of what she brings to the table, can get a relationship from a chad.
So with the point about the media and delusion, I had to just jump in right quick because, I mean, you know me, Dad. I've been a writer since I was in film school. I graduated in 2009 with a media production bachelor's degree. And since 2009, I've been trying my best to get into the screenwriting industry, and I've written my own books as a published author. And as someone who's in the industry, I can tell you that since 2012 at least, almost every agent out there, they're looking for LGBTQ type books that promote women and, the woman who's strong and independent female. Like, those are the books they want. So, everyone's complaining about how woke culture in Hollywood is now, but I saw it coming way back then, and the thing is, I created strong female characters way back in 2009 before it became mainstream and the trend. And the reason why I want to point that out is because back then, I honestly had to believe that if Hollywood promoted a certain type of personality, a strong type of behavior, it would help people, like if you promote that strong independent female, it would help them to be really strong and empowered. However, what I saw was the culture switch to social justice, and social justice is not empowering. It sounds like it is, but really all it is depending on the village to fight your battles for you. That's why, they take to social media and they post Facebook, and, you're trying to get everyone else to form a mob to come to your defense. Whereas if you're really empowered, you will go straight to the person who offended you and handle it. Again, I have the video linked down below. I encourage you to watch the whole video because it's really, really good. Also, keep in mind that there's a lot of generalization in there. Ladies and gentlemen, he's not talking about all, I won't even say he's talking about 90%. There's no way I could possibly know that. But from what I've seen, it does answer a lot of questions. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper as to the top 4 reasons why the dating culture may be a little bit askew, maybe a little bit lopsided these days, all right? Number 1, confidence. All right, so confidence or lack thereof is going to play a part in every point I make. It's a word that's thrown around and used a lot, and I don't think people really understand what they're saying when they're talking about it. Because if you walk up to any woman right now on the street and you ask her, hey, what qualities are you looking for in a man? 9 times out of 10, she's going to include confidence in her list. There's nothing wrong with that. Confidence is a good thing, but confidence is a double-edged sword. If you saw the video that I just played and if you saw it in full, you'd catch instances where a lot of ladies, they may be in that 4 or 5 range, but they think they're a 10. In the video, it explains how men will shoot their shots with the 9s, 10s, and 8s first, but if they get no luck, they will they will try the 4, 5s, and 3s. And Dad, I used to be one of those guys. God knows I wanted to marry the most beautiful woman I could find, but if beautiful women weren't checking for me when I was big and overweight, I had to lower my standards. And it was getting to a point, and this is when I had no confidence, no self-esteem, but it was getting to a point where I was willing to accept anyone as long as they showed an interest in me. I was considering myself lucky. But then something happened. I don't think I ever told you this. But one day, it was in my mid-20s, I kissed a woman who I was not attracted to physically. I kissed her because we were seeing each other for a while, like months, and I loved her personality. Honestly, she was very charming. I know there's a stigma about how women can't be funny, but this woman was so funny. Like, every time I was around her, I couldn't stop smiling. So I was attracted to that personality. And I was hoping that with time, I would train my mind to find her attractive. I say that because my very first girlfriend when I was 18, that's what happened. When we first started going out, I wasn't that attracted to her, but I never had a girlfriend before. So I just took a chance. And sure enough, like a month later, this girl was the most beautiful thing in the world to me. So in my 20s, I was hoping the same thing would happen. However, when I kissed her, I was so repulsed. It was so, honestly, is like a disgusting pit in my feeling. It was not good. And later that day, she asked me, or she texted me, and she's like, hey, when's the next time we can get together and cuddle? And then, inexperienced as I said, I think we should slow it down. I lost a good friend that day. I'm pretty sure I hurt her feelings. I don't blame her for wanting to keep away from me after that. That was my fault. I was stupid, and I felt that pain for weeks. I'm never going to do that again. People say, oh, you're not responsible for someone else's feelings, but I disagree. If you're with me, if you entrust me with your time, love, and affection, and I accept it, then I feel duty bound to consider your heart and protect your feelings to the best of my ability. Notice I said protect those feelings, not manage them. So remember that when I get to my point about divorce. The double-edged sword that comes from wanting a confident man is that a lot of these ladies out there, they think they're the prize. That's what they're raised and born to. Like my generation. They're raised out of the house, hey, you're the prize, and if no man wants you, there's something wrong with them. They fail to realize that a man who's confident in his abilities, his looks, his accomplishments, and everything he brings to this table, if we're confident, we're not going to think we're the prize, but we for damn sure think we're worth it. Meaning, because of his confidence, he will likely pass on a woman, if he's not attracted to a woman who's out of shape, or if she's unsightly in appearance, if she dresses a certain way, like promiscuous, slutty, or if she has a bunch of tattoos and he's not into tattoos, he's gonna pass on her.
I've never had a wealthy, fine man ask me what the fuck I bring to the table. I've never had that. Never. Because you know why? Because one, they brought the table and they brought the cutlery and they brought the meal and they brought the wine, and I showed up and I looked pretty and I was funny. Because they already saw my value before I even opened my fucking mouth. Like,
oh, thank you, sis. I'm so glad that you made this little video for us to see. You see, this is exactly what I've been talking about as far as the delusion in the female world right now. This woman is a solid 2. A solid 2. Not a 2, possibly a 3. She's a solid 2. What makes you think that a high-value man who invests into evolving himself physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially is going to connect with somebody who clearly doesn't have the discipline to make it to the gym 5 to 6 times a week? You can't even work out an hour 5 to 6 times a week consistently and eat right and take care of your body, but you want us to think that somehow you're innately some kind of queen or high-value lady?
You might think all that superficial, but I was a glutton, you know? I used to weigh 370 pounds, so I'm here to tell you that you can definitely tell a lot about a person just by their appearance. It takes time, experience, and wisdom to discern that and hone that skill properly, but you can do it. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about wise men. Saying you can't judge a book by its cover doesn't work on men like us. Just like women have preferences for tall men, strong jawlines, wealth, resources, and men who like to travel, go out, and have boats. Women have those preferences. Men have preferences too. However, unlike women in today's culture, men, we get shamed for openly stating what we want or don't want in a woman. What do I mean? Well, let's take this example. This is from The Real.
No man, no real man want no woman that's 100% independent. You know it's cool to be self-sufficient. It's cool to be able to get out here and do your thing and handle your business if you need to, but all that 100% independent, I don't need no nothing type attitude, listen, that ain't gonna get you nowhere with us, okay? Not no real man, because part of the reason we was even put on earth is to protect and provide. If you don't need me to do none of that, what you want me for?
So ladies, do you agree? If a woman is fully independent, is she worthless to a man when it comes to being in a relationship with him?
Look at that woman's face. Look at her face. I mean, first off, what the man's saying makes proper sense, especially if you're a Christian, because we're taught to be head of households anyway. But, I mean, if you silence voices like this guy's voice, or my voice, is it any wonder why a lot of these ladies are confused when men just aren't approaching? And when they say, where are all the good men at? You just shouted them down. If you watch the rest of the video, the real video, I have it down in the link below. I mean, they basically go off on them, making them feel bad. It's like gaslighting, basically. Like, how could you possibly want that? Like, what is wrong for you for wanting what you want? A lot of them act like this is the first time they're hearing it. So if men don't speak up in the mainstream, when I say mainstream, I'm talking about what you would see if you turn on the TV right now. You're not gonna see pro-male messages about what we want, like someone who's fit, feminine, in shape. You're gonna see a lot of women talk about men and how men need to step up.
I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
Whatever, the double standards, I think a lot of men who are mature, we're grown, we get it, whatever, you know, but at the same time, we're looking at this and like, okay, well, I don't want any part of this, so I'm out. And that's why you get a lot of this disconnect. All right, so going back to that very first video, around the 8-minute mark, the speaker, he talks about Tinder and how Tinder shows women or people the most attractive profiles first. I think that might be a business move to keep them hooked so they can start paying, whatever. And if she's rejected, then she'll lash out on the less attractive profiles that are being shown to her. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that what's happening is that after women are being shown all these attractive men, the 9s and 10s first, and then they start seeing all these 5 and 6, the women are gonna start basically swiping left on those 5 and 6 who are on their same level for the hope. This is the grass is greener mentality. For the hope of seeing more 9s and 10s. And this is what happens with the online dating. Like I had to explain to my boss, the defense attorney, because he says, oh, well, online dating sites, you would think it'd be a lot easier. We didn't have online dating sites growing up. I'm like, yeah, and that was a good thing, because now our ladies and men have this abundancy mindset where basically they'll just swipe on someone who's on your level, who may have everything that would be the perfect husband or wife for you, but they'll pass on you because, hey, you know what? Tinder, it's not just your village anymore. It's not just your community and, a couple of blocks down the street and who you grew up with. Now it's everyone within the 30-mile range. Last week, I had to delete my Bumble account. I was on it for 4 months, and for 4 months, I only had 2 ladies swipe right on me. Just 2. For those who don't know, Bumble is this account or this online dating site where you can't message a lady first, but if they don't swipe right on you, then you can't talk to any of them. And for 4 months, I was on this website, and I saw a lot of beautiful women. I swiped right on a lot of beautiful women, and I only had 2 ladies swipe right on me for 4 months. Am I ugly? Was my profile lame? Was it because I'm a Christian living by Bible standards? Were ladies holding out in favor for the more attractive men? It doesn't matter. I've been told I shouldn't take it personally and I have to just keep putting myself out there, right? But that's the equivalent of being passed up for basketball while captains are picking teams. So you just keep standing there for the next game over and over again for 4 months. And if you're always there, if you're always available to the same people and they're selecting others instead of you, what do you think that does to a man's confidence? Or rather, do you think a confident man would just stick around? And yeah, you could say, okay, you know what, Rock? You're confusing confidence with pride. Again, it doesn't matter. For single men such as myself, our confidence and our pride is linked to our peace and happiness. If we're out there trying to get in the game and no one's picking us, all power to them, but a confident man's gonna bounce and choose to do something else with his time, like work more hours, get more money, start investing in property, and knocking out projects like writing books and producing videos. All these things build him up. Mostly it's for his own fulfillment, but partially it's also because the next time he goes out there to play, to find a woman, the next two, he's hoping the new team captains are smarter than the last ones. Well, you know what, Rock? Those captains don't know that. That's why you have to keep putting yourself out there and make the first move. Yeah, let's talk about that first move. Or rather, I'll let Melanie King explain.
Women who say I'm old-fashioned, I don't make the first move, I always say then you're not old-fashioned. Because 100 years ago, a woman would walk past a guy, drop her handkerchief and keep walking. The guy would see it, he'd say, this is an extraordinary opportunity to be a man.
Yes.
He'd pick up the handkerchief,
rescue the girl,
walk it over to her and say, madam, you dropped this. And she'd say, did I? And they now have a conversation. Now, he thought it was his idea.
Yes, and she was
but
clumsy.
She chose him.
Wow.
So I say to women, listen, this isn't about reversing roles here and you suddenly doing the guy's job. It's about you doing what women have always done and dropping the handkerchief.
A lot of women actually think that it is historically that men chased women. This is not true. If you watch any of the old movies, women were always trying to primp and trying to find a man. This was universal, okay? That the women were doing everything to get a man. Men were generally working and doing things like that. They liked women, but they weren't focused on that. They weren't chasing a woman. And if you got a gentleman caller, it would generally be because something was initiated either through the parents. It depends on what part of history you're talking about.
In the first few minutes of this video, they talk about how women have always made the first move. This doesn't mean that men have never made the first move, but generally speaking, among my generation, there's this common belief that real men, put that in quotes, real men, they always make the first move, and they always like to chase, and they always like to hunt, and women don't need to do anything but just show up. Just make your presence known, and then if a man doesn't chase you, then that man doesn't deserve you. Honestly, I wouldn't even have a problem with this burden performance. I wouldn't have a problem with cold approaching women I found attractive even if she didn't give me any kind of indication of interest. But the difference between the older generation and now is that we're living in the age of social justice and Me Too. But hey, don't take my word for it, listen to these ladies.
So in today's video, we want to talk about why men are becoming more and more hesitant to approach women. We wanted to cover the growing trend of false allegations, false accusations of sexual assault, that men just perhaps don't feel that it's worth the risk to approach a woman, ask her out because of this increasing trend that we're seeing, because more and more you're seeing that, for example, if a man touches a woman's hand or maybe just cold approaches her and asks her on a date, it's harassment, I'm being harassed. Just kind of a very unjust accusation to say I'm being harassed. Obviously, if the man's asked her 10 times and she said, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, please leave me alone, and he keeps doing it, then that's when you get into harassment. But like the first time they come up and ask, or even another time, because some women like to be chased, all of this is just being wiped away because of this ever-growing trend.
All this brings me to point number 2. False accusations increase the risk. So I'm about to reveal a perspective you probably haven't heard before. I don't know if it applies to most men, but it's personal insecurity of mine. And my dad, we talked about him, he was down here last time, because, it's like a lot of people, they just don't get it. When people say, oh, you know what, you're just afraid of rejection. I'm not afraid of rejection, but I am afraid. I'm afraid of being looked at as a predator, a criminal, a villain, a monster. Like any other black man that you see on TV who got arrested the night before, and you turn on the news and they all look like me. So when I say I'm afraid of being looked at, put that in quotes, that's exactly what I mean. No one will ever come out and call me a predator or a monster or a villain or anything like that, but in my eyes, like I see them. Everyone is, they say, oh, you're sensitive. Yeah, in a technical sense, meaning I can sense. If you're happy, I can see it. If you're upset with me, I can see it. If you're afraid of me, guess what? I can see that fear. And sometimes shyness looks like fear. So I stay away from both. But Rock, sounds like that's all in your head. Yes. Well, that's not their fault. Correct. So then it sounds like the problem is you. Exactly. You see how I did that? That's called accountability. That's called blaming yourself, not everyone else. I don't blame everyone else or others for this insecurity of mine. But when I do see that flash of fear, that concern that comes across a person's face at the mere sight of me, it hurts. It causes some kind of psychosomatic pain in my chest. It's a rotten, awful feeling that takes days to get over, so I avoid it at all costs. And believe it or not, when I cold approach ladies, I run the risk of getting that because it's surprising. I'm a big dude, and it's like I was talking to a female friend about this, no lie, just 2 days ago, and she straight up told me, yeah, Rock, sometimes, you are a little bit intimidating. When I was in high school, my little brother explained it perfectly. He said, Rock, when you're walking down the hallway, you look like Debo. You look like you just beat the crap out of everyone who's just even bump into you. It isn't until you open your mouth and smile that okay, he's a friendly Negro, and that's just who I am. I don't have that resting bitch face, but I do have this, business kind of, I have my eyes, I'm big, I got broad shoulders, I'm sorry, but I look intimidating. Yes, you could say that all guys get those looks, and to that, I'd probably stop talking to you, because it sounds like you're trying to demean how powerful that pain is to me as an individual. I'm not sure if that tactics ever work, right? Like, by raising hands, if you fell off your bike and someone says, you know what, you're not the only one who's ever fallen off your bike, has that miraculously made the pain in your knee go away? No. Saying the N-word around me doesn't offend me, but it would offend my dad, who had a different experience growing up. People who play football have a higher threshold of pain than those who don't. I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. I used to weigh 378 pounds, and back then, I really did feel like a big ugly monster where I felt like everyone was watching me wherever I went, like a gorilla who got loose from the zoo. I know I'm not that weight anymore, and I know it's my fault for letting myself get to that big in the first place, but one of the consequences that I have to live with is the memories, the internal scars that may have healed, but they're still there. And perhaps I do need therapy. And I wrote that in my essay just to pacify a lot of people, because for me, I don't think I need therapy. I read the Bible every night, and that's my therapy. Hitting the treadmill every night is my therapy, but a lot of people who don't know what it's like to have religion or the power that God brings, to them, oh, maybe you need therapy. Sure, whatever, maybe. But then again, one of the quickest ways to my heart is a woman who can demonstrate from the get-go that she's not afraid of me. Because you hear this a lot. Well, Rock, you're always going to be alone, and no one's going to do it. I've had 2 girlfriends, and they were solid girlfriends, and they were beautiful. And the reason why I definitely asked them out is because they demonstrated from the get-go that they weren't afraid of me. Our chemistry was amazing. They weren't afraid to tell me how much they meant to me or how much I meant to them. And they weren't afraid to initiate affection. I love that. So let's get back to the culture. I know all this sounds like a contradiction of having confidence, but it's not confidence that I lack, it's courage. According to Merriam-Webster, confidence is a belief or feeling that you can do something well or succeed at something. Courage is having the ability to do something in the presence of fear. Fear is that God-given instinct that prompts us to avoid that which is dangerous. People who are afraid, that fear is there for a reason. Dad, I'd have to be a sociopath to shrug off all the crap I went through, all the misunderstandings, all the time my coworkers complained about a joke I said and claimed that I made them feel uncomfortable. When I was 24 and 25, within the span of 13 months, I was accused of sexual harassment. I had another girl claim that it felt like I was stalking her, and had another girl who gave me her number tell others at a post-Super Bowl party that I stalked her out to her car and asked for a number and that she was creeped out by me. Like, seriously, what kind of man maintains his courage with dating after all that? It's literally taken me years. It was mental trauma. People, when they say, oh, it's just a false accusation, if you didn't do it, you had nothing to worry about. You're an idiot. I'm just gonna put that out there. You, not just an idiot, but you just don't know what you're talking about. Anyone who was falsely accused, dude, like, it's much more than just a false accusation, especially over something that's as sensitive as rape or sexual harassment. I grew up, my parents raised me with that white knight attitude. You know, I would have probably be a male feminist right now if I hadn't experienced those accusations in my 20s. But because I have, I'm gonna get into, I mean, it basically helped me in a lot of ways. You know, because now I understand. I understand what other men are talking about. I don't take it and just dismiss it. I get it. You know, a lot of people don't. Men and women, they just don't get it. So to them, it's nothing. Like I said, it took years to overcome all that mental trauma. And it was even during that time of overcoming it, you know, I had a panic attack where I legit broke down and cried in front of my entire department while I was presiding over Toastmaster meeting. You know, I mean, you hear people talk about, oh, you know, we need to care more about men's mental health. Bullshit. Like, there's just platitudes, just because you can see it's starting to wear thin, you know, how enormously lopsided the culture is when it comes to, you know, I hate to say it, but favoring women over men. But whatever. Did I check out? Nope. Did I run away? Quit my job and run away? Nope. Did I make a Facebook post saying, hey everyone, I had a panic attack and for everyone I cried? No, I'm not looking for pity. But by the grace of God, I mustered the strength to pick myself up, learn from the mistakes, and harden myself against this wicked world and all its stupid advice. So when I hear people talk about, oh, you know what, you gotta get out of your comfort zone, you gotta try new things. Mentally, I just want to slam the door on these people. It'd be one thing if I was 25, but I'm 35. I have gotten out of my comfort zone. I have tried new things. I failed spectacularly and gone through my trial and error phase to learn my strengths and weaknesses. My generation would have you believe that, you know, you gotta just keep trying new things. You gotta keep trying new things and, you know, never be content. You hear that a lot. Never be content in life. But I don't think that's wise. The whole point of working hard is to get to a place where you are comfortable, where you are content. My Christian faith teaches me to be content with what I have, not continuously seek pleasures and materialistic things to store on earth. A couple of months back, you know, Dad, I'm talking to you. You came and visited. We got into that heated conversation at the restaurant, and you said along the lines of, Rock, you're a good-looking man. You know, I wish you just had the confidence to walk up to a woman and simply introduce yourself. Nothing bad's gonna happen, and I get it. You know, my dad's giving me advice because he wants to help, you know, but he's giving me advice based on his generation. My dad's never seen the videos of women being catcalled and all the backlash men got for giving women compliments. Yes, some went overboard, but they didn't break the law. And once upon a time, women had the strength to handle the situations as individuals. I was just watching, there's that movie, The Outsiders. You know, yeah, Matt Dillon's character brushing up on Diane Lane's character.
Get your feet off my chair and shut your trap.
Who's gonna make me, huh?
Be nice and leave us alone.
I'm never nice. Can I, interest you in a Coca-Cola or 7-Up?
Get lost, Hood!
I'm like, that's what women did. They handled it themselves, you know? Now our generation, you walk around, they look fearful, they're on their phones, they don't have the courage to look in the eye, and it's like, fuck. My dad's not likely aware of the MeToo movement and how it's put a man's career at risk. This hurts ladies as well because men, they're not willing to risk their jobs and mentor them.
Shock horror that men are now less likely to want to mentor women in the workplace. But rather than trying to understand why that might be, their message is a call to action to more men to step up and mentor women. And so by extension, if you're worried that a joke or a comment might be taken the wrong way while whilst working with a female colleague, then the easiest solution is just don't put yourself in that situation or limit the amount of contact with female colleagues. Now you might say, well, you don't have to go that far. Just be civil. Leave anything out of conversation that could be offensive. But now you have to be a mind reader. What's offensive to you is not offensive to me. And unfortunately, we know these days intention doesn't matter. It's offensive if the offence taker thinks it is. End of story. I talked before about the poor sap from Hewlett-Packard.
I was discussing some technical stuff with a lady who was working there at the company, and I was trying to explain a technical problem that I was having with programming, and then I stopped myself because I was under the impression that she was in the marketing department. So I stopped myself before getting too technical, and I turned to her and I asked her, "You're an engineer, aren't you?" And she said yes. And it turned out that was not an appreciated question for me to ask, because she got the impression that I should have known that she was an engineer to begin with, even though she was working in the marketing department. And so that incident turned up in my yearly performance evaluation.
If you're uncomfortable doing something, a mentor will push you to get out of your comfort zone, to reach new heights, to get that raise so you can battle the wage gap that you still think exists, you know? But if a man does that, he risks, oh, he made me feel uncomfortable, or, it was unprofessional, and that's all subjective. And all it takes is one complaint to HR, and that guy who busted his ass for 20 years to get to middle management or an executive position, he's now either taking a pay cut or he's moved from the department, all because of this accusation. Sheryl Sandberg is the CEO of Facebook. She's now the Meta platforms. That's what I guess it's called. She was on CBS back in 2019, where she spoke up about the issues of MeToo's effect on social interactions in the workplace. And when one of the guys asked her, "Hey, are you worried about the gossip?" Sheryl just said, she doesn't. Watch for yourself.
Surely men are not crazy to think, gee, if I have a one-on-one lunch or have this mentoring meeting, the gossip gets out of control. Suddenly I'm having to explain something when nothing was done wrong. What other steps then should men do if they have these concerns about what can happen in a workplace where, again, they have no control over when tongues start wagging?
Well, look, I'm with Gail. You have to be able to have a one-on-one conversation. And those conversations can happen in rooms with the doors open. In a public restaurant, having a lunch or dinner, I don't really think you can get falsely accused of something. And so I think men need to step up, and they need to say, in order to get women promoted, those women need the same coaching, the same feedback, the same opportunities that men get.
That's your answer right there. I have the link down below. Check it out. But she doesn't care. She just, all it is, you know what? I don't care what happens. Men just need to step up anyway. All it takes is a simple allegation. And thankfully, my accusations, I faced was back in 2011. But Dad, can you imagine what my life would be like if that happened in 2021? Dude, Billy Bush from Access Hollywood didn't even say anything offensive, but a recording of a private conversation that we're allowed to have. President Trump talked about grabbing a woman by private parts and railroaded Bush's career because people felt like he should have rebuked Trump. It was a private conversation. People like Tom Hanks came out of woodworks and were like, there's no room in America for locker room talk. Says who?
I don't give a damn who you are. This is America, Jack.
There's a Gillette commercial basically telling men to be better, in which dude was stopped by his male friend who wanted to approach a woman. And Dad, can you tell me that would not happen in the 70s? That would not happen in the 80s. The whole catcalling was just stupid because when I was growing up in the early 2000s, as a teenager, that was like a rite of passage. Like if you were out in the mall, you saw someone, it's hot, your boys would be like, "Hey, there you go." And you had to step up. It took courage, and women were aware of it. The problem with today's culture when it comes to all this is that the message is being pushed by, like I said, Los Angeles and New York and what they think is right and wrong. And the rest of us, you either got to follow the line or you get in trouble. And all these might sound like complaints, but I thank God I witnessed my situation. Joseph had to spend 3 years in prison after Potiphar's wife falsely accused him. And just like what Joseph said when his brothers thought he wanted to take revenge, in Genesis chapter 15, verse 20, he says, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." If it weren't for all the trials and tribulations, I probably would have done so far worse, you know? I would probably remain like the great multitude of people who have no clue, no compassion, no comprehension of words of comfort or conciliation for the people who are like lost sheep, wanting love and companionship, following the trends of modern day culture and ending up frustrated, confused, and addicted to porn, video games, or antidepressants. And yes, I do mean people, because it's not just men who are affected. Check out this sister.
I see TikToks on here all the time that talk about, like, you know, pretty girls and how they're never approached. And it's true. Like, I was just out at a bar. Black men were there. None of them talked to my friends and I. All pretty girls, black girls, none. And it's like, people say, like, finding someone to have sex with you, to take you out to eat, to compliment you is not hard. I can go on these apps clearly and find someone that's ready to have sex with me tonight, right now, without even knowing my last name. Literally does not know if I've just got rid of an STD yesterday, but is definitely willing to have sex with me right now. But finding someone that, like, is willing to check on me when I say I'm having a bad day, that's too much. And it's just so frustrating because it's like, I'm just myself. I don't know what else to do.
She's literally one of hundreds I've seen. And I gotta play this clip for you, Dad. This one, here we have Stefan Molyneux, and, you know, Wikipedia calls him a white supremacist. I don't think he is. I've seen many of his interviews. I don't think he is. But he has people call onto the show to ask for advice, life advice. And here you have a woman who keeps dating emotionally unavailable men. So Stefan asked him, okay, well, tell me about your parents. And sure enough, his mom and dad got divorced when she was young, and his mother, during the custody battle, she accused the dad of sexually molesting her. And because of that, you know, this girl grew up having an awkward relationship with her dad.
Sexual allegations in divorce are so common that they have their own acronym.
Right.
And so I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
Right. I highly doubt that they're true. So my dad went through a lie detector test at the time, and it came back false. And I've never, that I can recall, my dad has never, he's scared to touch me to this day. Like, he's scared to give me he's scared to give me a deep, loving hug. And, you know, he's hardly touched me at all growing up, and you know, like in a fatherly way.
Yeah.
So speaking of divorce, it brings me to my third point. Now, Dad, I don't want you to take this as a personal attack, but it's necessary to bring up how I am a product of divorce. We've had plenty of conversations where you told me about your regrets, and you've given me your perspective, and you revealed the circumstances surrounding my birth and what happened when it came to you and Mom getting divorced. I'm honored, honestly. I am honored from the depth of my heart that you felt free to share those details, and I don't take it for granted. I think the reason why I was able to handle those deep conversations well and not just lash out at you is because I've actually heard other men talk about their divorces, the child support laws, paternity fraud, and this notion of a no-fault divorce. I've never been married, but I know all of this. Where, you know, a no-fault divorce is where a woman could just wake up one day and find herself no longer happy and divorce you and take half your stuff, everything you worked for. You didn't have to beat her. You didn't have to, you know, you could have been always there for her. There was no neglect. You know, you never mistreated her, but she's just no longer happy. And that's all it takes. If things were bad back then during your generation, Dad, understand that it's considerably worse now. The reasons and conditions by which people are getting divorced is ridiculous. 80% of divorces is initiated by women. And yes, you could blame it on the men and say, oh, it's because men didn't do this or that, but the reasons are subjective. The numbers aren't. 80% are initiated by women. More and more my generation, men like me, we're seeing this. We spend our 20s working hard, busting our ass to build a financial foundation, getting out of college debt so we can start a family. And then we see videos like this.
So how much did my divorce cost me? Well, this is a fantastic question. There's direct and there's indirect costs. Direct costs, I lost $106,000 out of my 401k retirement plan I spent 20 years contributing to. I also lost half the equity in the home, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash, and savings that I also spent 20 years contributing to. I'm now broke, live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and have a negative net worth for the first time since I was, 25. Indirect costs, my job, my sobriety, my self-worth, my masculinity, my hope for the future, my ability to trust women again, my belief in God, my pride, my motivation, my physical health. Let's just say everything.
I know why divorce laws and child support laws are created. Once upon a time, Papa was a Rolling Stone was a thing, and a lot of men abandoned their families with little to no consequence. I was just watching the guy who played Joshua in the Ten Commandments. He basically abandoned his family, and so it happens. I get it. That's why we have child support laws. But as what seems with human nature, without God's direction, people take advantage of a good thing and they go too far. Jesus Christ said, everyone divorcing his wife, except on account of sexual immorality, makes her a subject of adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. That's at Matthew 5:32. Aside from my own determination, my devotion to following Christ is why I'm all but sure I'll never cheat on my wife and divorce her. Like, I would never do that. It's not going to happen on my life. That's not going to happen. However, there's no guarantee that my wife, another person who's not me, who I can't control, and she has her own free will, there's no guarantee that she won't fall in love with another, that feminism won't trick her into thinking that she's oppressed, and that one day she won't wake up and just tell herself, you know what, I'm not happy. I deserve more. Well, you know what, Rock? It sounds like what you need to do is just keep her happy then. Yes, exactly. Society laughs off this notion that, happy wife, happy life. But to a lot of us, being in a marriage with this mentality makes us as men hostages. And maybe it's always been this way, but I don't think so. Once upon a time, there was this thing called shame and societal stigmas from the community. Divorce and being a single parent, they weren't as celebrated and empowered with commercials and TV shows trying to normalize it, making it appealing or morally commendable or acceptable. It's not. It's a horrible thing. Without any of this shame and disapproval from the herd, without religion serving as guardrails, without all of this to keep people's morality in check, what you get is this wickedness where right and wrong is based on the individual's feelings, which can change on a whim or be influenced by people like celebrities. This is a clip of Brittany Renner. She's a social media influencer with 4.6 million followers. In this interview, DJ Vlad is talking to her about Hulk Hogan's marriage. And
like when reality shows became popular, you have these marriages like Hulk Hogan had been married to his wife for like 150 years, and then after a couple seasons, suddenly they're getting divorced and she's with some 20-year-old guy and trying to like relive her youth and so forth.
Good for her.
Because
it's fucked up, Brittany. What you just said was fucked up.
Good for her. That's what she says. Forget the husband, forget the family, forget the children. Good for her, says Brittany Renner. Brittany Renner, if you don't know, she was married to PJ Washington of the Charlotte Hornets back in 2020. She divorced him 13 months later after burying his child and is now entitled to hundreds of thousands of dollars in child support. A lot of people have bashed Washington, the guy, for marrying Renner, the woman, because Renner made it clear in other videos that she wanted to be a gold digger, and that's my point. People like Renner are a dime a dozen, and they're influencers. Here's a compilation. Check out Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews compilation down below. But Rock, that's just Brittany Renner, and she doesn't speak for all women. Influencer is just a title. It doesn't mean people are actually influenced by them. I want to believe that. But when you see songs like WAP make it to #1 in charts, when you see people like Jada Pinkett Smith talk about her open marriage and the entanglement as if it was nothing but a weekend trip to Tahiti, yeah, you could say that I could stop watching and listening to this content, but would that change reality or simply make me blind to it? People like Kevin Samuels and others are exposing this reality to the masses that you're not seeing on TV. I may not agree with all of Kevin Samuels' opinions, but when everyday women call into this show, they basically confirm what a lot of men have been saying about divorce and marriage in today's culture. In this video, in this video, a woman literally calls into Kevin Samuels' show and asks him how to divorce her loving, stable husband so she can go marry her ex-boyfriend, who now has more resources and made something of it.
I moved on, and I got married, but I don't want to be with
You got married?
Yeah.
You currently married?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
No. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Ma'am. Are you trolling me?
No, I'm not.
You broke up. This guy called it out, and and you said you wouldn't gotten therapy, and you're married, and you're actively on a platform with 1 million folks actively talking about leaving your husband to get back with your ex.
Because he's high value, and I felt like
Don't worry, I don't think this woman is normal. I don't believe that most women are like her. But can you imagine being her husband? Despite the risk and the hostage mentality, I don't care. Foolishly, I still have hope. I'm blessed with good role models and marriages that I've seen and have lasted a lifetime. I truly believe that if a woman's so beautiful, if she means so much to me that I vow to spend the rest of my life with her, it's worth it. I know that sounds blue pill and simpish of me in today's red pill culture, but it doesn't matter. You know, for me to do that, I believe without a shadow of doubt that my best chance is to seek out a woman who endeavors to put God first, bringing me to my fourth and final point. Putting God first. All right, so far with online dating, I've met plenty of ladies who claim to be God-fearing Christians, but by their words and their actions, they clearly don't put God first. What do I mean? Well, let's start with the basics. Do you believe that the Bible is inspired word of God? If yes, then you have to believe that what the scriptures tells us about how we should be living our lives, that also comes from God. Today's modern culture tells us that we don't need gender rules and that we need to break down the traditional constructs between men and women. Therein lies the Christian's dilemma. If Hollywood and the media is encouraging you to live a life that's different from what God's telling you through his word, the Bible, which will you choose? I've literally asked this question so many times, and you'd be surprised how many Christians struggle with it. You know, it's a no-brainer. This is super important because it tells you who you're dealing with. You know, whether or not a person's really endeavoring to put God first. The key word there is endeavoring. God knows we all fall short. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But by observation and a discerning eye, talking about wise men here, you can tell what kind of person you're dealing with if they keep making the same mistakes. You can tell if they're endeavoring to put God first by the way they react to the scriptures. Marisol, I mentioned her in my other atheist video. Recently, she asked in the Boss Radio Show, Rock, you know, you mentioned growing up in an oppressive household. Don't you find it weird that as an adult, you live your life by strict Christian principles yourself? And that's the thing. I don't find Christ's standards all that strict. And more importantly, I see the wisdom in living by those standards. My atheist associate is she's confused because a lot of people that she knows who claim to be Christians, they don't live by Christian principles. Jesus Christ said at Matthew chapter 16, verse 24 to 26, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be rich and famous. I want the whole world. Okay, but is that living by Christ's standards? Because we just read here that this doesn't mean that Christ wants us to live as monks, separated from society. But as a Christian, in today's modern times, I choose to remain a virgin until I get married. I choose to refrain from condoning and celebrating sinful lifestyles. If the Christian woman I'm dealing with can't accept this, it's alright. I wish her the best in her journey. And a lot of times when I talk about ladies who aren't putting God first, I'm not saying that they aren't Christian. I want to make that clear. You know, it could be that they're in the middle of their journey, they're still growing, they're just not there yet. So we're not on the same level. And if we try to mash up, there's going to be a lot of arguments there, you know, where she's like, oh, we need to do this. And she's going to try her best to make me feel bad for following scriptures because she doesn't understand yet. She's not at my level. My dad's already seen the video where I talked about wives submitting to their husbands, and I thank him for that. I mean, it was really cool. I didn't expect him to, but he did. But in that video, I mean, wives submitting to your husbands, that's probably the easiest litmus test when it comes to a Christian man determining whether or not a woman is endeavoring to put God first or not. If she cares more about doing what's good in God's eyes, if the world's saying, hey, you know, equal partnership and equally yoked, and, you know, anything a man could do, a woman could do, and, you know, I won't say she's too worldly, man. I mean, the scriptures are pretty clear. You know, this doesn't mean that. Just watch the video about wives submitting to, because people are gonna latch on to this right now, and I can tell them they're gonna be like, so you want to rule over the? No, just watch the video. Just watch the video. This is a big deal to me because it's my firm belief that the only reason why two married Christians get divorced is because one or both of them stop putting God first in their lives. If someone cheats, they put their own wants, their own desires before what God wants. If someone's no longer happy and they get divorced because society is saying it's okay under irreconcilable differences, again, you're not putting God first. Because what does God say in the matter? What did Jesus say? Every time the topic of marriage comes up, Marisol, the atheist, she'll say, I don't believe anyone should have to stay in a marriage where they're not happy. You know, if they're miserable, they shouldn't have to stay in. I don't believe in, you know, a woman being unhappy and staying in a marriage. That's what she would say. That's from the mouth of an atheist, a woman who rejects God and the Bible principles. It makes sense why Marisol, the atheist, would say that. She doesn't believe in God. But can you imagine what it's like to hear that from a woman who claims to be Christian? That she shares the same belief about marriage as an atheist? A wise man sees this, puts two and two together, which means when push comes to shove, her vows and commitments to you in marriage aren't as important to her than her own individual feelings. I don't like that. I've never respected it. And this is a person, a man or woman who lacks honor. And I have a video inserted here. I won't play the whole thing, but basically we have a pastor named Devon Franklin who was married to Megan Good for a long time. And a lot of people celebrated it. It was a nice thing, you know, like Megan Good's a hot woman. And I hate to say it, but when you're seeing a hot woman get with the pastor, it's an awesome thing because she's choosing, it appeared that she is choosing God to live a godly life over the world, but she's getting divorced and she's starring in this horrible delusional show called Harlem.
I was supposed to be out with my girlfriends tonight at a strip club, hooking up with a guy that I just met, but I'm here with you, so.
Oh, well, we just met.
Yeah, we did just meet.
I know my marriage to a Christian woman won't guarantee that I won't get a divorce, but unlike everyone who lives in a secular society where the parameters of what's right and wrong is dictated by how you feel, a Christian knows that they will be held accountable, that they will be judged by God, and justice will be served. Also, going back to the confidence, a man who's confident in their belief in Christ and living by Christ standards, that this is a man who could care less about dying alone if he never finds a woman worth marrying. This Christian is confident that there's a world far better than this, and if he endures to the end, he has a place in the kingdom of heaven. And I say that, I mean, it takes strength to say that, Dad. I mean, it's not an easy thing to say. I mean, I'm 35. I'll probably have another 30, 40 years. And as I get older, the chances of me finding someone I'm really attracted to is going to get slimmer and slimmer, you know? And for me to be resigned to the idea that I might possibly die a bachelor, never having sex and all that, and still being happy, knowing that there's a better life than this, you know, that takes, I mean, it's commendable. Honestly, the Apostle Paul said himself, I'll pull the scripture here, you know, where if you're not married, it frees us up so we can do other things with our life, you know. And I've mentioned it in another essay that a lot of people, they'll use that scripture or these scriptures and they'll say, yeah, see, this is why a lot of people were not meant for marriage. But what are you doing with your life then? You know, like if you're a Christian and you use this scripture as to defend your bachelorhood, or if you're a woman, your single status for life, how are you using your life? Are you using it in service of God, or are you using it in service of yourself, pursuing pleasure and materialistic things and all these experiences? I know old school thinking would have you saying that, you know, we know relationships aren't easy and there's going to be ups and downs. Genesis 3:15 explains that there will be difficulties between men and women's relationships. But I think with the black culture especially, too many seem to revel in these hardships. In this video, women are openly admitting that they'd rather date drug dealers and scammers over a 9-to-5 man. And this says a lot about the culture. So when people say, oh, Rock, what's the problem with black culture? I mean, look at it. Look at our music. Look at our TV shows. I mean, what are we promoting?
I need a drug dealer and then a scammer, then fuck the 9-to-5. I want the scammer first, then the drug dealer, then the 9-to-5. I like a scammer. Yeah. I'm giving 9-to-5.
Okay, I like that. 9-to-5 fellas, we're winning. We're winning.
Scammer, number one.
Scam. Damn. Okay.
I'm gonna say 9-to-5, then drug dealer.
And granted, this video doesn't speak for all women or even all black women. Diversity means a lot, and it means more than just skin colors. You know, diversity also means diversity of thought. And just like there's the Cardi B's and Little Kims of the world, there's also the Melanie Kings, the Shamika Michelle's, the Candace Owens. Meaning, I bet if the interviewer, you know, he went out to speak to black women who were God-fearing, you know, come out of church, or nurses, or paralegals, or dental associates, those women will probably say they would prefer a 9-to-5 man, not scammers like the ones in this video. Alright, Dad, so hopefully this explains what I have to navigate through when it comes to dating. And to the ladies who might be upset that I'm only mentioning the male perspective, I'm male. I had to say this because my dad mentioned this. He showed his one video to the wives submitting to the husbands. He showed that video to his wife. And he's like, yeah, you know, you didn't give a woman's perspective. I'm a man. And the thing is, women are allowed to give their perspective on TV shows, The Real.
No, you got your I don't need a man. I don't need a man. But guess what? I want you, and that's the difference. That's the difference. And if I choose you, that's not to say, oh, because I make my own money, that means no man can buy me something or do anything.
Let them know.
I have my money, it goes in the bank, you buy me dinner.
You got a bank account, don't you?
I don't get that.
And you could buy your own if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's
Vivica A. Fox's shows, but you're not gonna hear what men are thinking, you know, unless you go and look for it. YouTube has been a platform to be able to do that. My own website, stageandsky.com, has been a platform to do that. And I'm sure as a female, you could write up whole essays about men like Nick Cannon. Right now, Nick Cannon's got a lot of attention in news because one of his children died, and I'm really sorry for that. However, at the same time, they're not talking about, you know, the amount of children he has outside of wedlock. That's not good, damn it. Like, it's horrible. Future, this dude has multiple children outside of wedlock, multiple baby mamas. NBA YoungBoy, he's barely 24, have multiple children out with different baby mamas, and no one's talking about it. This is a bad deal, not just by the men and women who are sending and living worldly lifestyles, but also their children. You know, like, children deserve to grow up in a household with men, with the mothers and fathers there. But no, they're gonna grow up in a world where they're raised by single mothers, single parent households, who are probably gonna have men coming in and out of their lives, and they're gonna be really emotional. They're not gonna know how to handle it because they weren't raised by their fathers. And then they're gonna go to prison. They're gonna perpetuate the cycle. They're gonna get shut up by the police. And when they start, you know, they're on the news at night, oh, my son didn't deserve this. He deserved a father. He deserved a mother having in the house. But you're not picking them right. You're picking these assholes. That's just a passionate little rant right there, because you see it all the time. No one's talking about it, but you know, all right, so going back to my dad, I asked for patience. To my mom, I asked for patience. To my family members, everyone who, even my mentor, the defense attorney, I asked for patience. You know, if God chooses to bless me with a wife, so be it. And I say all that because talking to my female friend yesterday, when it comes to my own insecurities and my lack of courage of just walking up and approaching a stranger who I find attractive, oh, maybe, you know, well, you're gonna miss out. I don't live my life that way. I live my life going forward. I pick and choose my own direction. And if no one's there in that direction, because a lot of times it really is just divine circumstance, I think, you know, where you just so happens to be in the same room with, you know, a beautiful woman who's single, and you guys are attracted to each other and you click like that. A lot of people are just very fortunate. When I see men and women who are married or they get together, you know, I don't see envy. I don't feel envy. I don't feel jealous. I just think, man, that's so great that God bless him with her or her with him. You know, like that's just, that's how I believe. That's what I believe about Jehovah and God and his direction. And you know, hopefully all this helps you understand why I have to be picky and selective, you know, not throwing caution to the wind, because there are consequences. And I thank God that none of my brothers, you know, they have children out of wedlock, or they married a woman who they don't love or get along with. You know, I'll do my best to find a wife. There's no doubt about that. But know that my best is not your best. My generation is not your generation. And hopefully this explains. You know, if you're a guy and you know exactly what I'm talking about and you want to share, feel free to share. Feel free to like. This is just trying to shine some light on perspective you probably haven't heard or needs to be heard. All right. Thanks for listening.